I'm not going to make the mistake of slow playing my hand anymore. I make it 75 to go. But then when it gets over to the small blind, she does something very unexpected.
Hey guys, welcome back to Only Hands Poker. Today we're at Horsehoe Casino in Baltimore, Maryland. Why, you ask?
Welcome back to another episode of Close to Broke. My name is Kieran.
What is up, you guys, and welcome back to another video. As you can see,
It's the Close to Broke and Wolfgang Poker meetup game at Horsehoe Casino. It's my first time at a meetup game, and I was already planning on being at Baltimore that day for a friend's party, and so it worked out perfectly when I realized 2 days before that there was going to be a meetup game. This was before I had any of my vlogs published yet, so I didn't really consider myself a vlogger yet, and I wanted to see if I could learn more from these established vloggers. Let's get to the hands. Before my camera's even set up yet, I looked down at pocket jacks, because I've never played 2-3 before, especially not at a meetup game, and especially with the multiple stacks over $1,000 at this table, I wasn't really sure about the sizing. I opened to 15, it was a 7-high flop, with a king on the turn that significantly slowed down action. Eventually, I won a $50 pot from someone that had a 7. This next hand isn't too interesting as well. It's king-queen offsuit in the cutoff. The straddle is live from the button for $6. Horseshoe has the Mississippi straddle, so that's a straddle from any position besides the blinds, and that's for $6 to $15, which is 5 times the blind. At that point, the first to act would be the person to the left of the straddle. The small blind opens to $20. She has been playing a fairly aggressive, and I've already seen her have pretty wide opening and 3-betting ranges. I call from the cutoff to this reasonable price of $20, and then the button 3-bets to $111. The small blind calls as expected, and they make it super easy to let it go. The button later wins with kings, and the flop was king high, so I actually really saved myself by not getting sticky on the flop. The small blind had ace-10 offsuit though, which told me that this table was definitely playing big pots and very large ranges. The next hand we play is 6-5 suited and under the gun 1. I limp my suited connector to the $6 straddle because I'm still unsure of the game and wanted to play conservatively. The hijack also limps and the button checks her option. The flop is ace of hearts, 5, and a 6, giving me bottom 2 pair. This is a great flop for me. And definitely to lead since it was a limp pot, but my brain was still a little bit slow, so I decided to check. Perhaps with plans to check raise, but I don't do that. When hijack bets $10, the button folds, and I just call, hoping to trap a good ace, I believe. However, in hindsight, it is clear that there's no good ace in this player's limp range, and that this move was actually very flawed. The turn is a 7, which brings in many of the straight options. I'm really hoping that the player has a 4x or 8x that has now turned an open-ender. So when the hijack bets $35, I decided to put on the pressure and I check raise to $120, which doesn't seem to faze the hijack at all, so he calls really quickly, which makes me a little bit concerned, but he could still be on a draw. The river is the 4 of spades, which is an absolutely terrible card. For some reason, I level myself into thinking that he could perhaps have 2 pair with an ace, and that I could potentially scare him off if I led the river, representing an 8 for a straight. I decide to lead for $200, and he pretty much snap calls, showing 3-4 for a turned straight. I don't think he really saw the river because he later said that he was okay with calling in the case that I had 8-9, and he didn't really realize that an 8 by itself would have actually beat his hand, which is what I thought I was representing. After this big hit to my stack, I decided to add on for $300. The next hand that I play is king-queen offsuit in the low jack. The straddle is live in the under the gun, and I open to $20 in the low jack with this hand. I get called by the cutoff and the button. The small blind then 3-bets to $120. This girl has been playing pretty smart from what I could tell, so I'm a little bit nervous about that, but given that there's a decent amount of dead money and I would be calling to play in position after the flop, and that there are 2 pretty loose rangers behind me, the cutoff and the button, I decided to call this time. The cutoff and button both fold as expected. In reality, though, for me, this is likely a fold against a specific aggressive opponent who has been playing pretty well. There are a huge amount of reverse implied odds with a hand like this, as it's dominated by many hands in her 3-bet range, hands like ace queen, ace king, or any of the top pocket pairs. The flop comes 8-7-3, 2 diamonds, so I flop 2 overs and a backdoor diamond draw. This isn't a great flop, but it definitely hits my range a lot better than her range as the 3-better versus the 3-bet caller. So when she bets $70 into this pot, which is a pretty small size bet, I decide to call. The turn is a 6 of spades, which really connects with this flop, as a lot of straights have gone there, as well as a backdoor flush draw. At this point, the small blind checks it to me. I seriously consider taking a stab at this, as this would be much better for my range than for hers. However, I chicken out and I check back, which turns out to be a major flaw in this hand. On the river, the small blind, sensing weakness likely, jams all in on the river. She covers me significantly, so this would be effectively $235, which is how much my stack is, and it's a little over half the size of the pot. Given that I am king high, it's not really a good hero call, as I don't even beat her ace high bluffs. That's honestly the most annoying part about playing hands like this. So she doesn't show, but later when I ask as she's leaving the table, she tells me she had ace queen offsuit, which is still better than my hand. A hero call with king queen would have been technically the right move, but it would have been really wild and unfortunate because I would have still lost. Her all-in on the river was really effective, as it honestly would have put any of my one pair holdings like 8x or a small pocket pair into a really tough spot. I really like this play, and I definitely want to put that into my arsenal as well to use in the future. At this point, Wolfgang sits at our table. I'm super short stacked, and I had made plans before getting there that I would at max only put $800 on the table, as I wanted to head back to DC at a reasonable time. I'm starting to think that this may be a super devastating session when I look down at pocket kings from the big blind. There are 2 limpers to me, the cutoff and the button, which includes the man of the hour, Wolfgang Alexander Poker himself. I'm ready to play a big pot and maybe make it into the vlog. I open to $25 since I'm out of position, so I bump it up a little bit. Although realistically, I could honestly even go for $30 to $35, and both players call. I am loving the flop when it comes king high with 2 clubs. I check with plans to check raise, but unfortunately, both opponents check back. On the turn, I'm hoping for not a club, and we do see another heart, and the board becomes a lot more connected. This time, I cannot slow play anymore. I lead for $75, a large pot-sized bet, and this is to charge any draws and also to set me up for a river jam. The cutoff, Wolfgang himself, he folds, so there goes my shining vlog moment, and the button calls, indicating that he has a pretty strong hand of at least the drawing type. I'm looking forward to the river, and it is a blank. I followed through with my plan to jam. I jam for my remaining $135 stack, which is a little over half pot. The button thinks for a moment, and then calls. When I show, he says he missed hearts, but doesn't actually show his cards. I'm having trouble figuring out which hearts he has, given that he's still called on this blank river. The only hands I can come up with are ace deuce or ace 4 of hearts, but neither of those make too much sense. Perhaps 2 4 of hearts? Since I'm holding the king of hearts, that takes a lot of the combos out that I could put him on. In reality, this could have just been ace high hero call. What are your thoughts? What do you think he had there? The aggressive female poker player opens to $15, and I'm willing to play with her, especially with ace 3 suited. So I decide to flat and defend my small blind. The big blind also comes along. The flop comes king queen 3 with 2 clubs. I at least have a piece of this wet flop, but nothing good, especially if I was faced with a lot of pressure. We check to the pre-flop aggressor, and she bets $25. With a pair on this 2 club flop, I can definitely peel one because she really could be drawing or just taking a stab with high cards, but I would only do that with this player. I wouldn't really do this, stick around with bottom pair post flop with any other player, and I'm just picking up on the live tell that she likes to take stabs at flops when in position. In the hands I've seen of her, she really likes to bluff, so there's a solid chance I'm good. On the turn, I checked under the gun 1, and this time she bets $40. I still don't feel like she's very strong here because she would usually bet a lot bigger on turns that she has a really good hand on, and because of that, I decide to flat again. On the river, nothing really has changed, so I check again, and this time the under the gun 1 checks back, quickly saying that she gives up and is ready to muck her cards. I'm not too surprised, but I'm very pleased when I flip over my cards and she says I'm good. She said that she couldn't get there, so I'm perhaps thinking that she did actually have clubs. It's a pretty satisfying feeling to win with bottom pair. Ready to play with stronger hands, I look down at pocket jacks. The cutoff straddles to $10, which means the button is the first to act. The small blind then opens to $35. With my hand, I decide to flat this, given that I haven't seen much of the small blind, and it is very likely his range still includes pocket pairs higher than mine. We go heads up to the flop, and I'm looking to fade all the high cards. The flop is 7-6-4 rainbow. The small blind then c-bets for $60. He is fairly short stacked, so this is still a favorable flop for me in comparison to something like ace-king, ace-queen, and when he feels mandatory c-bets are in order. I'm ready to put maximum pressure. I raise to $225, which is a little under his stack. He contemplates a while and then decides that it's time for him to go all in. I snap call and we decide to run it twice. The run out on both boards doesn't actually look great, even though on the first board I turn a set of jacks. I'm still beat by straights and flushes if he somehow magically had 2 hearts or 2 spades. I'm super surprised to see the opponent have 8-6 suited for a middle pair, gut shot straight, and backdoor club draw. Funny enough, both boards had backdoors for flushes, but I'm lucky that it wasn't the suit he was looking for. I scoop the pot, and I'm finally back in the green for the session. Our next vlogger has joined our table close to broke, and he starts commenting on how there's so many women at this specific table, and that pretty much out of the entire mug that all the women are sitting at this table. It's pretty cool to see how supportive he is of poker playing women crushing the table.
Poker has a propensity to be like super masculine and uncomfortable, and if I'm feeling that, I couldn't imagine what it is for whether you're female or not. Even if you're just new to the game and you play at home casinos, I couldn't imagine how uncomfortable it would be for a smell like that. I don't know, that's my 2 cents.
My next hand is 8s in the cutoff. I open in the cutoff to $20, the button calls, and so does the big blind who played a lot of hands. The flop comes Queen 8 for 2 hearts. I flop middle set. It checks to me, and I c-bet for $30, hoping someone hit top pair or a flush draw and was willing to stick around. Unfortunately, they both fold. The dealer was pretty disappointed with me because he was nicknamed the high hand magician since he had dealt so many high hands previously. So he told me that the 4th 8 was definitely coming on later streets, and I should have stuck around to see it. So I was a little disappointed after hearing that I didn't slow play and wait to see a 4th 8. Anyhow, disregard high hands, it was still the right play. My stack is still hovering around the $800 mark, as in this stack update I have only minus $6 with my $500 buy-in and $300 rebuy. I want to give a shout out to all my subscribers and viewers, especially the ones that have been giving me constructive comments that I have incorporated into my new vlog. I hope you like the colors for the suits and my attention to detail with fixing minor errors throughout my videos. Really appreciate you guys. Keep it coming. Man, this next hand is a doozy. I look down at ace-king offsuit in the small blind. There are 2 limpers and the button opens to $15. I don't know who I thought I was or what I thought I was doing, but I decided to only flat this and not 3-bet it from the small blind, which is honestly a crucial mistake in any game. And for some reason, I just wanted to play it really differently. And we go to a flop of ace, jack, 8, rainbow. I check and flow, and the aggressive female poker player leads for $25. She gets 1 call from the under the gun 1, and then the button raises to $75. At this point, I'm pretty disgusted. I don't think I can call without raising too many alarm bells, but folding would also be way too nitty. I don't know why I settled on an all-in, but that's what I ended up doing. I think for some reason I thought the button was a lot more short stacked, maybe more like 250, 300, as I couldn't really see him well as he was on the other side of the dealer. I realized it way too late that when I said all in, this was for over $500. And the under the gun easily folds this. And this is where it gets really weird because under the gun won, then calls the $75, not realizing that I had gone all in because I had said it verbally instead of moving all my chips in the middle. Eventually, we figure it out, and he does go all in himself, $285 effective. And it's not too hard for the button to call off with his whole stack. I know that I'm beat here, and I do have outs as the button shows ace-jack suited for a flop top 2. The middle position, the under the gun 1, he doesn't actually show his cards until the end, but he eventually shows ace-5 suited. So I'm at least not last place here, and I'm hoping to hit a king on the turn of the river, which do not come. So I basically give off half of my stack after clawing my way back to $800. This is pretty disappointing and a really bad play. In hindsight, I think what I should have done at least was 3-bet pre-flop and to consolidate the number of players. And of course, I still would have lost a pretty big pot with this exact board, but I didn't have to give it off in such a glorious manner. I could have raised to maybe $200 on the flop and then played smart on the turn on the river. Putting it all on the flop, what was going through my head was that I would perhaps get ace-king that would be chopping to fold, or to get max value from ace-queen or ace-10. But if I knew this player more, as in if I had watched some of his videos or actually watched him play, I would have realized that there's no way he would have called all in with any of those hands. So I'm not really getting value from any hands. I'm only really effectively calling off a chop, and I'm more likely losing to something like ace-jack, which is what happened, or even pocket eights for a flop bottom set. Despite my best intentions, I was pretty tilted after making that terrible decision on the ace-king versus ace-jack hand, and I had lost a lot of confidence in my ability to play. So there's about 2 more hands left, one being queen 10 offsuit, where we turn top pair, but I lose to ESP Poker again with his king-queen offsuit. The next hand, I have king-queen offsuit and flop top pair, but get beat by king-deuce suited, which flopped 2 pair. All of this got me pretty down in the dumps, and I really should have just picked up my chips and headed home after realizing that I couldn't get my emotions in check. With the king-queen hand, I'm down to 0, and that's my cue to pick up my stuff and head on home. This was a super fun session. It was my first time at Horsehoe Casino. It was my first time at a meetup game, and I really loved the environment. I loved meeting everyone. I loved that everybody was super talkative at the table, and it was really great. I'm just a little bit disappointed with the way I played, but I'm also quite proud of the way I was able to climb back from a minus 500 session, only to give it all back to the table. This was a minus $800 session. I've been mentally prepared for a bit of a downswing, given that my last few sessions were all mega big positive sessions, but I didn't really think that it would go like this. I'm going to have to take a bit of a pause with poker as I recoup and think about my strategy with poker and managing my emotions. Never mind, we're heading into MGM. My friend texted me, let's go.